Okay, now we're going to talk about the defective concrete block scheme again. Of course, we've been told, and Minister Charlie McConalogue released a press release towards the end of last week talking about how it's working for a lot of people and changes are being made to it. We heard the Taoiseach Simon Harris on this show saying, look, tweaks are needed, but for the most part, they are following the science. He was very quick to point that out, and that the scheme is working for many people. But for many people, it simply isn't. And there's a growing cohort of victims of the defective concrete block scandal that are facing the same experience. Marti McElhenney is with me on the show now. Marti, thanks for your time. Lovely to speak to you.
No, thank you. Thanks for taking on the call at all.
No, it's important to get this out there. So there is more and more people seemingly having their option downgraded by the housing agencies. So maybe the best way to explain it is originally what you were told was required for your house, and then the process to being told that something else would do.
Okay, Greg, I'm part of an ever-increasing group of downgraded homeowners, and we've come together because we have all been transferred over to the housing agency. And then the housing agency they have downgraded us. They have essentially said the recommendations from the engineers that we have engaged, they've overruled them. And in most cases, that the overruling that has happened has been done from a desk. So they haven't even visited our house. So we initially got our core samples and our engineer's report in September 2021. And we were transferred over to the housing agency in June 23. And the 4th of June of this year, the housing agency came back to us and said that they didn't agree with our engineer's option 1 recommendation, and they downgraded us to option 3 instead. And this is just not feasible. And
just in relation to that, Marti, obviously 3 years have passed since the initial report was drawn together, the initial core samples. Was
Absolutely.
there a site visit in those intervening 3 years for them to make that determination that option 1 wasn't the correct option?
Absolutely not. And this is one of the huge problems we, the downgraded homeowners, have, is that we haven't had any visit. We have no noted deterioration since. In my case, it's nearly 3 years. There's other people who haven't had a visit in 4 years. So essentially, the decision is made at a desk without noting any further deterioration off our own homes. And it's
so we heard also
it isn't working for us.
We heard also too from the Taoiseach Simon Harris last week, who cut across me to say, I take issue with that. We are following the science. So your block showed levels of pyrite and pyrrhotite present in the blocks. Is that factored into the decision to switch you from option 1, full demolition?
It is to an extent. The housing agency report from their engineer is kind of taking it on to an extent. They are agreeing with my engineer's report. They are saying, it is noted that I have high susceptibility to deterioration due to presence of potentially problematic lithodages and minerals. My rising walls have a low Newton strength. In my eyes, it's 6.5 Newton noted. My rising walls are really deep. It's 1,650 millimetres deep. There is mica present in a large amount. There is pyrite and pyrrhotite. And my rising walls are in noted blue clay soil, wet conditions, and the rising wall has been wet for prolonged periods of time. Mm. But the housing agency then are sort of saying they think that we have adequate strength levels in our concrete blocks to sustain the rising wall. Okay. When they've actually, they've undermined their own opinion in many ways already.
So just for those who may not be aware, Marti, obviously option 1 is full demolition, isn't that correct?
Yeah.
What are they actually proposing that you do? And say it slowly, because I want people, as you describe what they want you to do, to sort of imagine what it might look like in their minds. So what is the option that's been given to you now at this point?
Okay, right now they want me to do option 3. Option 3 to me is remove the outer walls and the inner walls and leave the rising wall. But the rising wall is where we have a huge problem with, because the rising wall has noted issues, and they essentially want me to rebuild on a rising wall which is at huge risk of further deterioration or degrading, and they want me to build on it.
What about your internal walls?
The internal walls, they're saying that's fine too. They're not taking that into account. So literally it's the whole outer leaf and inner leaf of the house, and then building on top of rising walls, which my engineer, the chartered engineer that we engaged, is saying, the rising walls have issues. We can't do that.
It sounds to me like this would also be a very expensive way of repairing a house. I mean, what builder or what contractor might want to go in and like the roof is still there, the rising wall's still there, and I know some people call that different things, but rising wall seems to have been the most common way of describing it. The internal walls are still there. It sounds like a nightmare job.
It's a complete nightmare. And the other thing is they want to give me $242,000 to do this. But I know, I feel in my heart that, I'm going by, we are moving along with the science and we are listening to the people who actually know what they're talking about. And my rising walls are going to fail. So then do I have to go back? And if I have to go back at that stage, I have to demolish my house anyway. The rising walls are going to fail. They have noted issues. That is what... That's what's hugely suspected by all, is that, we're following the science, and the science is telling us that with these deleterious materials, there is a huge risk of the further deterioration, and we have to go by that. And the Housing Agency have essentially just ignored that in their report, and they just want me to build on top of walls that I know and has been noted they are at huge risk.
So, I mean, you've got a 90 days to appeal. I don't know what that appeal looks like. Do they send someone out to site? Because just to clarify here, what we have a situation where a chartered engineer goes on site 3 years ago, by the way, checks over the property. There's core samples taken. The determination is that the house needs to be demolished, and of course, there's concerns over the rising walls. Then that lands on a desk somewhere in Sligo, I think you've mentioned, and someone remotely says, oh, no, what we'll do is we'll leave the roof, we'll leave the internal walls, we'll leave the rising wall, and what we'll do is we'll give you 270,000 to change the inner and outer leaf of the, effectively the four walls, but whatever shape your house is.
Yeah.
So that to me then please, Marti, go ahead. I just want to make sure...
Oh, yeah.
Because you're so involved in this, everything, but I really want the public to get what we're talking about here. But go ahead, Marti.
Okay. Another point is that the engineers engaged by the Housing Agency, they were issued with a description of services, and under that description of services, it asked the chartered engineers' individual dwelling final report to the Housing Agency shall include the following: the extent of damage to date. But essentially, in my case and lots of other cases, you're missing years of further deterioration not taken into account because nobody's come to visit my house.
Yeah. But it leaves you in a situation like, what do you do? Say, for instance, the appeal is unsuccessful. Do you sit and wait and see if the science changes, in inverted commas? Do you sit and wait to see if there's a change of government and policy? Like, it can't. I've got Paul Gallagher, the Attorney General of the Times. I've got Paul Gallagher's words ringing in my ears here.
So do we. We all have that.
Yeah.
Greg, there's something else I just want to note too, that, the appeals process itself is very hard. Nothing has been made easy for homeowners here at all. So the group that I'm in now, the Downgraded Homeowners Group, we are trying our best to work together, and it is a minefield. So, but there's an excerpt from the Schedule 15 from our appeals, and it tells us that please note only documents which were previously submitted to and considered by the designated local authority or the housing agency should accompany this notice of appeal. So essentially what that's telling us is that we can't submit anything proving or showing any further deterioration to refute their option that they've granted us. Mm-hmm. So we are stuck. It's like we are destined to fail. And absolutely, the Darragh O'Brien and Paul Gallagher's leaked emails there recently, they are ringing in our ears. We feel that we've been set up to fail. There's no support there for us. The Downgraded homeowners, we feel it's a money-saving exercise, and that we're guinea pigs, essentially, to see what will happen with their house.
Okay.